Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. Today, I am very excited to welcome back Wendy Yellen. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi there, Ben. I'm glad to be back too. It's an honor.
Yes, you have made the cut of the very few repeat guests, so excited you get to be part of that prestigious club.
Me
So,
too.
very excited to have you here. So, let's first tell folks who didn't catch the first episode a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Wendy Yellen, and I've been working with people with deep inner transformation for more than 40 years. I use a tool, now I exclusively use a tool called Eidetics, which is an ancient art, but 21st century neuroscience-based process that is different than any other process I've encountered in my 40 plus years of working with people. And the reason I work with it exclusively now, and I've dropped all the other things that I've been trained in and certified in, is because it's so beautifully effective and deep and real. And it doesn't just use the mind. So you're not, instead of trying to force yourself to think a certain way or to feel a certain way, it comes from a different place. And we're going to have a chance to experience that together today. And so people will get a chance to know what that's like for themselves.
All right, I love it. Yes, in our first episode, if you didn't catch it, I felt like I exposed my heart, mind, body, spirit, soul to the world as Wendy took me through uh, going through a scene with my parents, and it was pretty good. And you reached out today because you wanted to offer some more tools for folks during these coronavirus times where fear is high, anxiety is high, and just help folks where you can. So really appreciate you reaching out to provide more help and expand your platform. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
And I want to highlight what stands out a little bit, talking about how you're choosing to do this exclusively, is that you used to be a therapist, and what I remember is that you saying that it just A, you got bored with it, and B, you found it did not yield nearly as much transformation as this eidetic work.
Yes, that yeah, well put. Yes.
All right, and
I would say I wasn't so much bored with it. It's just that my feeling was, I mean, I had a super full practice, completely full. I did no marketing. The only people that were coming to me were by referral, and I was full with a waiting list. So obviously something was going on right. But my personal feeling as the therapist and also as a client was, if this was all change could be, this was as big and real and deep as change could be, I didn't want to keep doing it. It just wasn't enough. I felt like if people can't actually transform more deeply than this, then this is not the work for me. And I actually I closed my practice because of that until I found this work. So it wasn't, I mean, yes, sometimes I was bored, but it was more that there's got to be more than this, because
right,
I kept hitting with my intellect would interfere with the kind of change that was possible.
right. In other words, there had to be more effective way.
Much more effective. Yeah.
Right. And if I think about it, because I think this is interesting to talk about, and I've been through some therapy, and I found it cathartic for when I entered into it, but then I found myself asking myself the question, what's wrong this week? And some of the behavior that I was looking to change wasn't really changing. And I think it speaks to that for me, it was like with therapy, you could understand more intellectually what was going on, and you could intellectualize it, but that understanding of it didn't necessarily lead to the behavior change that you were looking for. And I don't know if that was your
Yeah.
experience too.
Yeah, and of course, like I'm thinking of an old friend of mine, someone I've known since I was 15. He went the psychoanalysis route, and he's really different. He's really different. So, and he's much happier. So I'm not saying this is about or for everyone. I'm just saying what my personal experience was and why I changed. And
I want some broad generalizations here. I want something really polarizing here. Come on, Wendy.
fit everybody. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Um, so you're not really ready to take down any other practices, huh?
No, like besides, if everybody in the world wanted to do eidetic work with me, I couldn't do it anyway. So it's not possible. Uh, you know, I I never knew when I was just a quote regular psychotherapist. I had no idea how I was stopping myself from feeling better. So I would go week after week. Even when I started Eidetics, I was working with the father of Eidetic imagery for my personal work, Dr. Asen, and I would go and I I could experience for the first time in my life how I literally would stop myself from doing the one thing that I was there to get help with, feel better. So this is like, I'm not proud of this, but if I was starting to feel better in the session, I would hide it. I might have told you this last time. I would hold back the pleasure in my voice so Dr. Austin couldn't hear it. How crazy is that? But we all do that. We all say we want something really badly, and then we do so much to stop ourselves, and then we're miserable, and then we go and do it again. This is the human condition, in my opinion, and why it's so hard. And let me say something. So we're recording this on May 18th, 2020. You are going to people won't get to hear it till sometime mid to late June. We're doing this at a certain point in the emergency pandemic around the world. Things change so fast that by then it's going to be a whole other ball game. But what we're going to do today is transcends that kind of time. So I want to talk about two things I've learned during this crisis about myself and about my clients, and what I found to be such a helpful way of thinking about things. So one is that everybody has experienced different kinds of traumas in our life, whether it was being hospitalized because you had broke a leg, or had some injury, or had some disease, or somebody died or got divorced, or there was a financial problem in your family, or millions of things, so many endless possibilities of varying degrees of intensity. Even having a younger brother or sister who you think your parents love better, that's a trauma. It's definitely a trauma. So, and we carry those things no matter what we do. If we try to forgive someone, or a lot of people just try to forget stuff, what we do is that trauma has created like an Achilles heel in us. And in my opinion, what I'm seeing with COVID-19 is that the uncertainty and the fear and the scariness and the lack of the rudderlessness feeling of it brings up each person's unique Achilles heel and makes it much worse and much more tender right now. So an Achilles heel could be feeling judgmental about other people. An Achilles heel could be wanting everyone to hurry up and just get it faster, like impatience, for example. An
I've got
Achilles,
that when I'm putting my 2-year-old down to sleep, and
oh, yeah, like just go to bed, go to sleep now.
go
Yes.
the F to sleep.
Yes, exactly. So for someone like you, my bet would be for your listener, for me, or for you, that that's something that you've worked on, that you've wanted to soften, but right now it's harder to soften that part of you, much harder, and it's coming out more than you would like. Is that fair to say? Somewhat?
It's
Not
a
so
it's
much.
it's a good question. It's hard because it seems to be matching both his increase in toddler rebellion. It seems to be coalescing with us. So it's tough to isolate the variables, but
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
overall, um, more edginess.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty conscious dude, and I'm working on that anyway.
Yes.
But yes, it is
Yes.
sometimes hard to keep my chill.
Yes, yes. And so one of my clients, for example, um, gets a real horrible had been getting a horrible feeling when she'd put on a mask to go shopping. And the trauma that was coming up for her had to do with asthma and breathing. And so it really was triggering that. And her anxiety was on the roof, on the roof. And for another client is being triggered by the protective clothing. She works in a hospital, like the other nurses' protective clothing and so forth. And it was related to a trauma that she had when she was 4, related to a sibling. So, and these things, they kind of take us over. It's like, especially for someone like you, Ben, or people who are um, really wanting to be conscious right now, it feels worse because we don't want to be like that. And it's a super spiritual challenge right now to be in the midst of what's going on, be conscious, notice what's coming up from deep inside of us that is not where we want to be, and how much harder it can be to deal with that part of ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
sure does. So, I think you just touched on it with a couple examples, but if I'm kind of playing back what you just said, is that right now this pandemic is causing people to get triggered, and it's bringing up old stuff and not stuff that they would have been triggered with otherwise, because of the unique circumstances and the unique kind of heightened fear that is just kind of in the ecosystem anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. For example, one of my Achilles heels is impatience. And so, yes, would I have gotten triggered by stuff in normal life? Yes, but I'm so much better than I was 10, 20, 30 years ago. So much better. But lately, boy, you don't have, it's like just the surface scratch opens it up. So I mean, you could talk about it as an opportunity, which it definitely is. I'm really have the chance to look at what's there and to go and to find honest and true and real and deep other places in me and let them come out. Because if I don't pay attention, they'll just come. Not, and I'm not talking about controlling them, but really working with them. Because if I'm not paying attention, that's not the person I want to be. That's for sure. And it's not fun to be around either.
Right.
My poor husband.
Yeah, I mean, and if I have to say like one other behavior that, I billing myself as a conscious person, but when I go into default mode, especially if I'm with my family, I can go to default zoning out on the phone, whether it's scrolling through news or, scrolling through social, and I think that kind of escapist behavior has been a thing that I've done. So
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of other folks are probably doing that too,
Yes.
to just kind of escape their reality and head somewhere else.
So much. And so let's talk about what could be happening with the mind. I totally agree with you. People try to escape, try to forget about it, try to move as far away as possible from it. However, if you ask that person to just stop and notice what's actually going on inside, I would make an educated guess that if they could pay attention, they would feel the anxiety that they're trying to push away, trying to leave. And what I believe in my personal and professional experience is that if you do it that way, it's not going to help overall. It might help for the moment. It might feel a little better. But if you're someone like yourself or myself, where being conscious is a value, and having going to a higher place and a deeper place that's real, then those kind of escapes or those kind of covering up don't really reduce, they don't really change what's going on inside of us. And it's what's going on inside of us, that jitteriness or that fear or that anxiety, or hoping someone won't bring up COVID because it triggers you so much, and wanting therefore to control could be another possibility. So when you go there are better places to address those feelings that can work, so that the person can actually ratchet down the anxiety, the fear, the tension inside. And besides, I've been taking some studying a little tiny bit, not of Ayurveda, not so much to be an Ayurvedic practitioner, because I don't, but because I find it super interesting to think about the health of the body right now. And that kind of tension, that wired feeling in the body, is terrible for our health. Terrible.
Right.
Not just mental, but so from all those, plus the people around us, from all those levels, it makes more sense to address it and let yourself get to that different place, which is accessible, but it feels almost like it's disappeared lately for a lot of people. That the fear is, there is no normal inside anymore, I think.
Let's get it back, Wendy. Let's get it back.
You want to get it back?
Get it back.
We, all right. We promised we would do an eidetic image or eidetic exercise. Now, this one is one of thousands, and Ben, you and I are going to do it, and then I'll walk you through it and myself, and then I'll talk to your listeners about what might be happening to them. So a couple precursors to make this more powerful for people. So this eidetic imagery is, like I said before, an ancient art. The ancient Greeks knew about it, but it also works with neuroscience. Now, one of the things about fear and anxiety and panic is that the firing of our neurons goes so much faster when you're in that mode. I don't know, 10 times, somewhere around there. So when you tie your shoes or you put your seatbelt on, those neural pathways don't have to fire as fast. There's no danger, right? It's just, this is the habit. This is what we do. You can even feel it. I can feel it as I'm talking about it. But you know, somebody coming too close to you in the street, or having to put on your mask, or whatever it is, or not knowing how much you should go out right now. Those kinds of things go fast, and it's a heated pathway, and we need that. So, for example, you're about to step onto a busy street, and someone says, "Look out!" You know, you've got to react fast and step back. You've got to. That's needed for the organism. It's needed for us, but you don't need that to tie your shoe. So when the problem is when things get overheated in these transmissions of information in our mind, and they happen fast, they start to go on a loop, and they start to continue to go fast. And we've all felt that, where you just like can't come down, so to speak. So we're going to work literally with that. I'll talk later about some of the ways people have used this, not just with themselves, but with other people. So the first thing I would do is, and one other sort of foundational principle is, I'm going to give some instructions, eidetic instructions, but I'm not trying to get you or the listener to feel a certain way or to think a certain way. So if you find yourself trying to force something, don't. And so for you, Ben, since I can hear and talk to you, you just tell me. So here goes. So put in your mind something that creates panic, fear, brings up your Achilles heel. Let's go with something related to COVID for now.
Let's see. I mean, going into the grocery store, it's like one of those things where, I'm heightened stress, waiting in
Yes.
line for the grocery store even more.
Yes. So let's just, okay, to make a finer point of it, what does happen for you?
Well, it's like, put the mask on, think about, are these particles coming after me right now? And thinking about, is it, am I putting myself in danger right now? Am I putting my family in danger by getting groceries?
Yes. So I'm sure everybody listening can relate. And don't go away. Don't get too triggered by what's happening with Ben, because that happens all the time. Let's work with this because that's really common. All right. Now, look at your brain right now. So see your brain in an image. So don't try to imagine what your brain would look like. That's a different instruction. See your brain in an image. And what I'd like you to do, it's as if, the top of your head was off and you could see into your brain fully and deeply.
Okay.
And I'd like you to look around and see what color and or temperature the brain is as you're standing there in the grocery store line, wondering about those things. So I should have started with, see yourself standing in the grocery line first.
Right.
And then look at your brain. And I want you to tell me about temperature and color on the outside, but also deep inside in the hidden places. And you take all the time you need. And of course, so the listener, you can do everything I'm suggesting to Ben and see what happens in your image. It won't necessarily be the same as Ben's, and that's totally makes sense.
So what's coming up for me is, color's red and the temperature's hot, and it's, very kind of frantic energy kind of around the top of my brain.
All right. So the top of your brain, frantic energy, red and hot.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Great. So for Ben, it's easy because it's on the outside of the brain. For some people, you have to look in the crevices, the crevasses, and go deeper and look for hidden heat. But for Ben, it's easy because it's right on the top and it's hot and it's red. All right, good. Now, and frantic. So now start to throw or shovel cold, slushy ice on the red hot frantic parts. And you have all the ice in the world, all the natural Arctic, Antarctic ice. I know some of it's melting. However, we have all that you need, So just stay with shoveling or throwing, seeing that you're shoveling or throwing cold, slushy ice, natural ice on those spots. And what you want to watch, and as you throw it or toss it or shovel it, what happens when the ice hits the hot spots, and take your time with it, Ben. So you want to see, what am I actually seeing and what am I actually feeling?
So first, some steam comes up, then my brain cools down, and my brain starts to feel cool, almost a little bit of brain freeze feeling, and what's interesting is so it feels like I'm in my body, I'm calming down too.
All right. Wow. You're doing great. I wouldn't take it to like ice cream brain freeze. Back off a little bit from that.
Okay.
But keep going.
It's
And
cold though.
yeah, definitely, because you're really watching. Let's put it this way. Don't do more than feels good to you.
Okay.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So stay with it a little longer. Notice how the brain looks now. Again, you already said all this, but I want you to just stay with it a little bit longer. What you see and what you're feeling in your body. And let us know when you want to. Now, I'm going to say something to everyone, and that is that Ben's doing this like he's been doing it for years, like really easily and really fast. If it had been me 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to go anywhere near that fast or anywhere near that effectively. So between where Ben is now and where I would have been a long time ago, there's a huge interval. You may find yourself somewhere along that continuum, and that's just the way your mind is working right now. If you're someone more like I was, you're going to need to give yourself time here, and that's perfectly fine. So what are you seeing and feeling then?
So my brain temperature has cooled down around the top of my brain, and um, that that coolness comes with it, like more calm and less of that frenetic energy. And I noticed that my nervous system has relaxed in correspondence with that. So um, yeah, overall there's more calm than there was there before.
All right, now you can go. Can you just look at yourself now, the whole self standing there in line, and um, tell us what you see and how you look right now from the outside?
Sure. I look um, pretty relaxed, waiting there in line, but um, I'm just kind of, I've got more of a nonchalant waiting rather than head darting back and forth, wondering about distances between the person in line in front of me and
Yeah,
back of me. And
yeah,
so yeah, just
yeah.
a little more relaxed standing there.
All right. So again, at this point, we could do one of two things. We could stop here because you've reached a different level,
Mm-hmm.
or we could go one more level and see. What would you like to do?
Um, let's go one more level. What does one more level look like?
Yeah, okay. We'll find out because I don't know either yet for you. So now, as you see yourself in the grocery store, well, let me see. Yeah, let's try it this way. So now can look at your brain waiting, the brain itself in an image waiting there at the grocery store. And this time, go ahead and look deep inside and really look for any hidden places of heat or red. They don't have to be there, but if they are there, you want to find them.
So this is interesting, and maybe listeners, would maybe wondering a similar thing. It's like, I know that there's like a fear center in the brain. So like what comes up for me is like, oh, it just makes sense for my amygdala to be lighting up because that's the base where fear comes from. So I don't know if that's my, intellect coming up with something versus, coming up from the eidetic space, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I was hoping that would happen today, Ben, because from working with you last time, I was hoping that I knew that your mind might go there. So this is the huge contribution of Eidetics, just like it's suggesting, which is that you don't want to go from the conscious mind or the memory or the thinking or the rational understanding of anything, because we're going to a deeper place. You're absolutely right there. So you can look there, but what I really want you to do is, and this is the gift here, of to really just look all around the brain the way it's showing up right now. Because if you were to look at your brain last year, not if you and I had talked last year and we looked at your brain, it would have looked different. So it's today's image and this moment's image, and it's Ben's image. This is why the Greeks called these images gifts from the gods, because they're very particular to right now and they hold a key. So you really want to see what your eidetic image is showing you as you look for the deep hidden places. And if the head, again, this is for everyone else too, if your head tries to tell you something, okay, just go back and look. It's really simple. What do I see and what do I feel? What do I see? What do I feel? Simple, but not always easy.
Um, so if I'm noticing like body sensations, I don't necessarily see this, but I feel like a little bit of pressure on like a certain point in the top of my head. Um,
Let's just I'm hearing what you're saying, that it's a sensation rather than a visual. When you look at that spot in your image in the brain, tell us what you actually do see in that spot. Describe it, not just color and temperature, but you could describe it too. What's going on there in your image right now. And if it isn't red or hot, then keep looking in other places. Sometimes these hidden places can be very tricky, and they're part of the more difficult ways that we have these habitual knee-jerk reactions to things when we're so stressed. Completely natural, but they're to have those knee-jerk reactions, but the places they come from in these images, you can sometimes take some searching. Sometimes they're not there though. Sometimes it's just the surface, like you were saying before. That doesn't mean it's superficial. It meant it was on the surface.
right. Yeah, there's no other like images that are kind of naturally coming up for me right now.
Nothing. No. Okay. So now let's pick a different situation then to go deeper, where you would get triggered regarding COVID, where your Achilles heel comes up, or where you're just like, ugh, it's just it's just so difficult. It adds pressure and weight to life.
I mean, so for me, it's like an annoyance of we've got a very walkable, runnable neighborhood, and so it's just in terms of feeling self-conscious about who I'm breathing on, where I am in the street, and just wanting to relax and walk. It adds like an extra layer of tension just to going outside and enjoying a walk.
And where do you feel the tension? I'm going to do this slightly differently now. Where do you feel the tension in you?
Um,
Actually, when you see yourself taking that walk,
right.
where do you see and feel the tension in you about it?
My jaw.
Okay. All right. Now, from the jaw, the tension in the jaw, trace that tension up to the origin of the tension in the brain in your image. Find the origin of that tension. This is a
Okay.
more advanced aspect, but it's really great. Okay, so, and where is that origin?
So, it's almost like there's a curved line going up and into the back of my head, entering like the middle of my back of my brain.
Okay, all right. So, and now look at that area, including deep inside near that area, and see if there's any hot spots. And if they are there, cool them down with ice. Throw cold slushy ice on those places. And take your time with it and really see what happens, just like you did before. What happens when you throw the ice? What happens when the ice hits? What do you see and how do you feel? And I'm repeating that for everybody too.
So the hot spots in the back of my brain cool down, and that kind of circuit cools down too, and my jaw relaxes a bit.
Good. Do it a little longer. Let's see if we can get the jaw. Don't try to relax the jaw, but do the ice a little bit longer. And let's see what happens to you or for you. So what I'm doing, by the way, is I'm in my image, I'm Ben, and I'm looking around at people and, wondering about distance and, contagion and that kind of sort of, and personally, I'm regretting that this used to be such a great thing and now I got to do it like this. And as I'm feeling that way and thinking that way, my jaw as Ben is getting tighter, and I trace it up to this place in the brain, and I'm throwing and pouring cold slushy ice and seeing what happens when the ice hits. And for me, in my image, what's happening is it's actually kind of very slowly trickling down to the jaw, little bit, not very, very cold in mind. So it's the brain and then the jaw. And as I'm doing that, I'm actually starting to feel my stomach relax a little bit more too. And I'm feeling my shoulders change too. As I look around, I don't feel quite so wired about my surroundings. That's what's happening in my image. That's another way to do Eidetics, which is called co-consciousness. But that was my image, not necessarily Ben's. So Ben's, what's happening in yours?
Yeah, I noticed more of a relaxing in the jaw, and that kind of whole circuit cooling down. And then I
So,
wasn't really paying attention to my stomach or shoulders before, but
mhm.
yeah, it's just kind of staying up there.
What was the last word? It was just kind of,
Oh, I was just, my focus was kind of like up on the top of my head.
uh-huh, uh-huh. So, so let me say a couple things about what we just did here. It's so easy to get triggered in your own Achilles heel. I'm talking to all your listeners. It's so easy, and the opportunity to get re-triggered is constantly there. The more you do the ice image, the lower your normal becomes in terms of tension. And you can do it for 90 seconds. You can do it while you're in line. Last time I went grocery shopping, I did an eidetic image the whole time I was in line because it triggers me too. And it felt much better than the times when I didn't do that. So you can do it while you're in the situation, and it's a way to loosen that tension and that overheated reaction. It's a way to break the pattern, which is really important. Right now, if you have a pattern about going grocery shopping, and I imagine a lot of people have that inner pattern, then this is a way to start to ratchet it down. So you can do it while you're at the grocery store or whatever the triggering place is, or you can just do it while you're just sitting down. Just check your brain. How hot is it? Cool it down. One of the really important things that we didn't do, which I mentioned before, I did not tell you to relax, to chill out, to stop thinking that way, to stop feeling that way. I didn't try to make you change your state. Instead, we worked imagistically to change the state. And a lot of times people understandably think they need to be calmer. But the thing is, trying to make yourself be calmer will often make you much more tense because it's not happening enough. And I also said that I wanted to share a couple ways people have been using this. So I have a nurse who works with children in a hospital, not COVID, but works with children.
Right.
And they're going off the wall. All the things they normally can do, they can't do. And it's very tense. And so she's done this image many times with herself. And so she's been working with the kids and the staff, giving them this image. She knows how to do it. So she's able to do that. And she said, there was this one girl who was off the wall, throwing things in the cafeteria. The nurses had to spend hours cleaning up the walls. And now she talks about, this girl talks about how red the spots still are and what she's doing to bring it down. And she's doing it for herself all the time. That's just one example of how our minds will respond to something like this. That part of our consciousness really wants help and will take it on. Like even just these few minutes, you went in fast, Ben. You shifted fast.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I love that, it's simple enough for kids to learn and give them a way to self-regulate. Curious as what comes up for me is thinking about other modalities where you look at releasing emotional blocks, and in some of the other modalities, RIM, for example, they talk about, imagining a pain in your body. So it was interesting for me, is like, I'm not used to thinking about a sensation in my brain because it's not much of a feeling structure, but thinking about pain in our body and how things are stored in our body. How is this kind of like similar and dissimilar to other techniques where you go in and dive into a pain in your body in order to release it? And maybe you can't speak to that, but that's a question I have.
I can. It's a very long discussion, but the primary way that you go in with Eidetics is, this is Dr. Austin's contribution actually, is image, soma, meaning, in that order. So a lot of modalities right now start with the body. What's your sensation? With Eidetics, you don't start with the soma. You start with this image, which we're not controlling. And then from the image, you notice what the feelings are. And then you go back to image and feeling. When you do that, you go to a different place. That's a much longer discussion, but it's really different to say, how are you feeling? Can you cool yourself? Can you change that feeling? Just to simplify, versus what does your image show you? Because, for example, I've had people say, I'm I'm feeling okay. You can tell they're not, but they're feeling okay. And then I ask them to look at the spots in the brain, and there's a firmness going on. Lava flows. So it gives you contact with yourself that you might not have, you know, and this is also what's so beautiful about it, in a way that will help you to shift. Is That's a very superficial response, but because it's a very complicated question that really speaks to why I do Eidetics and not other things right now. Is
Okay.
that at least a beginning help?
Sure. And
Yeah.
just so, the way I'm interpreting that is like, we could have talked about where do you experience pain on your body or tension, and I could have talked about my jaw, and in other modalities you could have maybe dove into the jaw and go from there in terms of what does it feel like, what are you seeing, what are you hearing, but that is
Yes.
body feeling first instead of starting with the imagery. And what you're saying is the power and the uniqueness of Eidetics is the fact that you start with the image, and that gives you a different sequence and a different outcome potentially than you would have otherwise had.
For me, exactly. Well put. And an eidetic image is not a visualization. It's not controlled. It's not what we think we should see. It's not what we think would be there if we looked. It's actually looking. And oh, there was something else in what you said. I lost it right now.
So if people want to play more with Eidetics, I assume um, going to a trained practitioner like yourself would be the most helpful. Are there other ways to understand about Eidetics, and
Sure.
are there parlor tricks you can play at home with folks, and a big book of Eidetic images you can play with?
I'll show you something. Well, I won't show you. Yes, what I've done for COVID specifically is I've put up a whole bunch of videos, and I'm adding a handful or so of videos and I'm making more um, that are free resources. I'll show you how to get that in a moment. Which the one we did today, fear, seemed to be the one that people were listening to and watching the most. There are some on, when the person you're living with and you love the most is triggering you constantly, how to deal with that, and other things that are coming up for everybody around this very unusual situation we're in. So you can always watch those and follow along with those and get it's food for thought. I have a blog and other podcasts that I've done where I walk people through things. It's Eidetics is simple, but not easy because the mind wants to interfere all the time. Just it always is. We're always thinking and trying to change things to the way we think is better. But the thing is, the level you and I are working at today has nothing to do with thought. It has to do with the deepest part of a person. So, for example, what you were saying, I remember now what you were saying about the jaw. And if we had started with the jaw. So, what I love about this work is, yes, we want that jaw to release. More importantly, though, we want the whole physiology of the person from today's work to be able to slow down and not knee jerk and not react. Because once it's in that place, then we can think, we can discern what makes sense and what's just fear. We can be different with the people that we love and with ourselves. We have that opportunity to respond, and the jaw can relax, and the shoulders and the stomach, or wherever we're holding it today. That's that's to me why I love this work so much and the contribution for me and my clients. And so what I would do is, if people want more free stuff, you can go to my website, which is wendyyellen.com, WendyYellen.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter and you'll get all notifications about when I do more COVID related free videos or when I offer another image to work with, or even some thoughts that I put together to help people with what's going on in their lives, either COVID related or not. And all of that are free resources. And it also, there's a way there. If people want to do deeper work, there's a way there that you can get in touch with me.
Beautiful, beautiful. One other question before we sign off, because this has come up for me, is
Sure.
I've noticed during this time, um, there's been lots of opportunities to feel good, and there's been times where I've noticed myself, feeling sad, and how would we use something like Eidetics to help us deal with like the sadness about the loss of once was, or how things used to be, and the challenges that we face now. So how would we go about? I mean, is it similar types of imagery that you take us in, and
Yeah.
same process?
So, first of all, there are things to be sad about right now, right?
Yeah.
That's real. And if you're, if it, I would say that's normal to feel some sadness, right? I mean, the loss is, it's huge, and on so many levels. And you have, a new baby. I mean, my goodness. Um, and if the sadness is all that someone is feeling and overwhelming, or most of what the person is feeling, or they keep going back to sadness and it's very hard to get out of it, that's something else. And if it's being triggered right now by COVID related stuff or fear of what's coming, um, it's very possibly related to what we talked about in the beginning, an early trauma, or earlier situations which are more tender right now and more easily triggered. So that would be where a piece of work, real deep work, would help. Is there an image to give with that? That's where I work uniquely with people. I mean, that's the best way. There isn't one simple one. However, invite me back and we'll work on a sadness one if you want to.
All right. All right.
And we could, but it is unique. It is unique to each person. Just like the anxiety and fear is, but the cold overall slows down that over fast reaction and
Right.
really helps most people.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah.
like you give ice to people for anxiety, maybe you give them ice cream for sadness.
Chocolate, some form of chocolate, maybe sea salt caramel.
All right.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Beautiful. Anything else that we haven't touched on that? And thank you for sharing all those resources and your expertise with us, and this really cool methodology for helping us shift. Anything else that we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so, unless you have any other questions. I think that's great.
No, I think that's good. Well, thanks again for being a guest and sharing your passion and your expertise with us. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.